The Empire had ruled 17 star systems for 10,000 years. They had crushed rebellions, burned worlds, and made entire species bow before them. But in all that time, they had never needed to use their most terrible weapon, the dragons. These creatures were not normal animals. They were monsters made in laboratories long ago, built for war and nothing else. Each dragon was 300 meters long, covered in scales harder than any metal known to science. They could breathe plasma hot enough to melt starship armor. Their wings could carry them through space itself. And their minds were chained by ancient psychic technology, forcing them to obey every command without question. When scouts discovered humanity, they laughed. These humans had only learned to travel between stars a few decades ago. Their ships were slow. Their weapons were weak. They were not worth a real war. So the High Council made a decision. They would send one dragon to the human colony world called Nu, just one. The beast would destroy a few cities, kill a few thousand people, and humanity would surrender in fear. It was simple. It was efficient. It was how they had always done things. The dragon they chose was named the Unconquered. Was the oldest of all he had lived for 6,000 years, chained in service to the Empire. He had burned 17 worlds. He had killed billions. Entire civilizations existed now only in history books because of him. The other dragons feared him, him as a symbol of their power. He was perfect for this mission. The command ship carried to the edge of the human system. Admiral, a tall creature with gray skin and 4 eyes, watched from the bridge as they approached the small blue-green world. "Release the beast," ordered. "Let the humans see what true power looks like." Fell toward Nu like a meteor wrapped in black scales. He felt nothing as he descended. He never felt anything. The chains in his mind did not allow feelings. There was only the command: destroy, terrify, break their spirit. On the surface, alarms began to scream. Nu was not a military world. It was a farming colony, home to 300,000 people who grew food for other human settlements. The colonists had never seen war. They had never needed to. Now they ran. Emergency shelters opened across the colony. Families grabbed their children and fled underground. The small defense force scrambled their fighters, knowing they had no chance but refusing to do nothing. In the middle of all this chaos, in a field of golden grain outside the main settlement, a young woman named Did Not Run. Was 28 years old. She worked as a veterinary, which meant she studied and treated alien animals. She had come to Nu 2 years ago to help the farmers deal with strange diseases affecting their livestock. She was good at her job. Animals trusted her. They always had, ever since she was a little girl. Her grandmother used to say she had a gift. "You can feel what they feel," the old woman would tell her. "It is a blessing from our ancestors." Had never believed in blessings. She believed in science, in medicine, in hard work. But she could not deny that animals responded to her in ways they did not respond to others. Scared creatures calmed when she touched them. Aggressive beasts became gentle. It was strange but useful. Now she stood in the field, frozen, watching the dragon land. The impact shook the ground like an earthquake. 3 grain silos collapsed. A crater formed where touched down, 200 meters from where stood. Dust and debris filled the air. When it cleared, she saw him. He was bigger than anything she had ever imagined. His body stretched across the field like a mountain of black scales. His wings folded against his sides, each one large enough to cover a city block. His claws dug into the earth, leaving grooves deep enough to bury a transport vehicle. And his eyes were looking directly at her. Each eye was larger than a ground car, burning with orange fire. They should have been terrifying. They should have made her scream and run like everyone else. But saw something in those eyes, something that made her stay. Pain. 6,000 years of pain, buried so deep that even the creature itself did not know it was there. Loneliness. Confusion. a mind that had been chained for so long it had forgotten what freedom felt like. This gift, the thing she had never fully understood, reached out without her permission. It touched the dragon's mind like a gentle hand. And something broke. Felt it happen. The chains that had controlled him since his creation, the psychic bonds that had defined his entire existence, they shattered like glass. For the first time in 6,000 years, his mind was his own. The silence was overwhelming. He had never known silence. There had always been commands, compulsions, orders burning in his brain. Now there was nothing, just emptiness. And in that emptiness he felt something else. A thread, a connection, but not like the chains. This was different. This was warm. This was freely offered, not forced. It came from the small creature standing before him, the human female who had not run, did not understand what was happening. His first instinct was to destroy her, to burn her where she stood. That was what he had always done. That was what he was made for. But he could not. The command to destroy came from nowhere now. There was no one to give it, and something in him, something that had been sleeping for, did not want to hurt this creature who had touched his mind so gently. In orbit, Admiral saw the impossible on his monitoring screens. "The binding is broken," his technician said, voice shaking, "is no longer connected to the control network." His 4 eyes went wide with shock. This had never happened. In 10,000 years, no had ever broken free. How, he demanded. Unknown, but the human female in that field, something happened when the dragon looked at her. Made a fast decision. Whatever this was, it could not be allowed to continue. If word spread that they could be freed from their chains, every slave species in the empire would start hopping, and hope was dangerous. "Begin orbital bombardment," he ordered. "Destroy the entire settlement, leave nothing alive." The weapons of the command ship were powerful enough to crack a planet's crust. Plasma fire rained down on Nu like the anger of an evil god. Saw the sky turn red. She knew what was coming. She closed her eyes, waiting for death. But death did not come. Instead, she felt shadow fall over her. She felt heat, incredible, terrible heat, but it did not touch her. She heard the roar of the bombardment, the thunder of destruction, but she remained whole. When she opened her eyes, she saw wings above her. Had spread his massive wings over her like a shield. The plasma fire from orbit splashed against his scales, and his scales held. They had survived the hearts of dying suns. They could survive this. For 5 minutes, the bombardment continued. For 5 minutes, the dragon protected the human who had freed him. When it finally stopped, stood in a circle of untouched ground. Around her, the field was glass and ash, but she was alive. She looked up at the dragon. His eyes met hers. And she heard his voice in her mind for the first time. It was deep and ancient and filled with confusion. "What are you?" Took a shaking breath. Her legs wanted to collapse. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst, but she answered honestly. "I don't know," she said, "but I think we're going to find out together." Above them, the ship retreated to a safe distance, its crew trying to understand what had just happened. They had sent a dragon to break humanity. Instead, humanity had broken their dragon free. Did not move for a long time after the bombardment ended. He kept his wings spread over the human female, uncertain of what to do next. For 6,000 years, every action he had taken was commanded by others. Now he had to think for himself, and he had forgotten how. The silence in his mind was terrifying. Sat down on the burned ground beneath his wings. Her legs had finally given out. She was shaking badly, and tears were running down her face, but she was not crying from fear. She was crying from something else, something she felt pouring through the strange connection between her and this massive creature. She felt his confusion, his fear, his desperate loneliness. "It's okay," she whispered, though she did not know if he could hear her. "You're okay now." Lowered his great head until one of his eyes was level with her. The eye was as big as her entire body, burning with orange fire, but she did not look away. She reached out her hand and touched the scales near his eye. They were warm, almost hot, and harder than stone. "Why did you free me?" His voice echoed in her mind again. "I didn't mean to," she admitted. "I don't even know how I did it. I just felt you, and I wanted to help." Help, the word seemed strange to him, like something from a forgotten language. "No one has ever wanted to help me." "I'm sorry," said. "I'm sorry for everything they did to you." The dragon made a sound that might have been a laugh, but it came out like thunder rolling across mountains. "You did not do it. Why are you sorry?" "Because someone should be." They stayed like that as the sun set over the ruined field. Emergency teams arrived from the underground shelters, but they kept their distance from the dragon. Military vehicles surrounded the area, their weapons pointed at, but no one dared to fire. They had seen what the orbital bombardment failed to do. Their guns would be useless. Commander was the first human brave enough to approach. He was a tall man in his 40s, with a face and steady eyes. He had served in the Earth Defense Force for 20 years, fighting pirates and protecting colony ships. He had never expected to face anything like this. "Ma'am," he called out to, keeping his voice calm, "are you injured?" "No," she called back. "I'm fine, he protected me." Looked up at the dragon, turned his massive head to look back. For a long moment the two studied each other. "Is it safe?" asked carefully. He corrected. "And I think so. He's just confused. He's been a slave his whole life. He doesn't know what to do with freedom." Nodded slowly. He was a practical man. He could see that the dragon was not attacking, and that was enough for now. "We need to get you to safety," he said. "Though we'll try again." They will agreed, speaking directly into both their minds. Stumbled backward in surprise, hand going to his weapon. "They cannot allow me to remain free. I know too much, and I am too dangerous." "Can you fight them?" asked, recovering his composure. "I have fought for them for 6,000 years. I can fight against them just as easily." The dragon's mental voice carried something new, a hint of dark satisfaction. "I would enjoy that very much." Over the next few days, humanity scrambled to respond to the crisis. The ship remained in orbit, watching but not attacking. Admiral had sent a message to the Empire, requesting instructions. Nothing like this had ever happened before, and he did not want to make the situation worse. On the surface, refused to leave side. Scientists and military officials came to study them both, asking endless questions that neither could fully answer. How had the bond formed? What did it mean? Could it be repeated? His friend arrived on the third day. She was a scientist who studied alien minds, and she had traveled from Earth as fast as possible when she heard the news. "This is impossible," she said, scanning with her equipment. "The binding technology is supposed to be unbreakable. It rewrites the brain at the deepest level. You shouldn't have been able to do anything." "I didn't do anything on purpose," repeated for what felt like the 100th time. "I just reached out to him, like I do with animals back home." "But he's not an animal. He's an ancient engineered war machine with a mind more complex than any computer." Shook her head in wonder. "Your gift, whatever it is, shouldn't work on something like him." "Perhaps that is why it did work," suggested. "The binding was designed to block commands and control signals. It was not designed to block kindness." Stared at the dragon for a long moment. Then she started laughing. "Kindness," she repeated. "The greatest weapon in the galaxy broken by kindness. They are going to hate this." They did hate it. A week after the failed attack, a message arrived from the Empire. It was not a negotiation or a demand for surrender. It was a declaration of total war. "They're sending their main fleet," reported in the emergency meeting. 50 warships, including 3 planet killers. They'll be here in 2 months. The room fell silent. Humanity's entire military could not stop 50 warships. They might destroy one or two before being overwhelmed, and the planet killers, those weapons could crack new like an egg. "We have to evacuate," one official said. "Get everyone off this world before they arrive." "Evacuate to where?" another demanded. "They'll just follow us. They want to make an example of us now." "There is another option," said. He had been listening through, who attended every meeting now. "Attack them first." Everyone turned to look at, who relayed the dragon's words. "Attack them," asked. "With what?" "With me and with others like me." His mental voice carried a weight of ancient memory. "There are more, hundreds of us, chained in service to the Empire, if we could free them." The idea was insane. Break into space, find other dragons, somehow break their chains too. It would be a suicide mission. But it was also the only plan that might actually work. "Can you do it?" asked quietly after the meeting ended. "Can you free other dragons the way you freed him?" Looked out the window at where waited. His massive form curled around the remains of the settlement he now protected. "I don't know," she admitted. "I don't even understand what I did the first time, but I have to try. If there's even a chance we can free them, we have to try." "You could die," warned her. "Touching one mind nearly broke you. Touching many could destroy you." Smiled sadly. "Then I'll have to be careful." That night she sat beside under the stars. The dragon had lowered his head to the ground, and she leaned against his snout like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Tell me about them," she said. "The other dragons." "They are my brothers and sisters," said. "We were created together long ago, but we have never truly known each other. The chains prevented it. We could fight together, but we could not be together." "That sounds lonely." It is. He was quiet for a moment, but not anymore. Closed her eyes. Through their bond she felt his gratitude, vast and deep and warm. She felt his hope, fragile and new, like a flower growing through cracked stone. "We're going to free them," she promised. "All of them. And then we'll learn what happens when you chain someone for 6,000 years." Above them, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter. Somewhere out there, the fleet was gathering. Somewhere out there, hundreds of dragons waited in chains. The war for the galaxy was about to begin. And it would start with an act of kindness. 6 weeks passed faster than anyone expected. Humanity worked without rest, preparing for a war they knew they might not survive. Factories on Earth and every colony world produced weapons day and night. Ships were repaired and upgraded. Soldiers trained for battles against enemies they had never faced. But the real preparation happened on New, in a small building that had once been a veterinary clinic. Had turned it into a research center. She studied brain scans, analyzed the connection between human and dragon, and tried to understand the gift that had broken chains. Every day brought new questions. Every night brought few answers. "Your brain is different," explained one morning, pointing at glowing images on her screen. "There's an area here in your temporal lobe that's much more active than in normal humans. It seems to generate a kind of psychic field, very weak, but constant." "A psychic field," frowned. "That sounds like science fiction." "A month ago dragons were science fiction," smiled tiredly. "The universe is bigger than we thought." Spent most of his time sharing information with the military. He told them everything he knew about the Empire, their weapons, their tactics, their weaknesses. Commanders recorded every word. "They rely completely on their dragons for major battles," explained. "Their ships are strong, but they are stronger. If we remove the dragons from the fight, their fleet becomes much weaker." "And if we add the dragons to our side?" asked. "Then we become unstoppable." The plan came together piece by piece. Knew the location of every dragon in the Empire. There were 312 of them, spread across 17 star systems. Most were kept in special holding facilities when not in use, their minds locked in a kind of sleep. The largest facility was in the home system itself, orbiting a gas giant called Threshold. 17 dragons were held there, including some of the oldest and most powerful. That's our target, decided. If we can free those 17, they can help us free the others. It creates a chain reaction. Getting there is the problem, another officer said. The home system is the most heavily defended place in their empire. We'd never make it through in a normal ship. You do not need a ship, said. You have me. The dragon could travel through space under his own power. His wings did not need air. They moved through the fabric of space itself, pushing against forces humans did not yet understand. He could carry passengers on his back, protected by his scales and his internal heat. It was insane. It was also their only chance. The strike team was assembled carefully. Commander would lead, bringing 10 of his best soldiers, insisted on coming to study the other dragons, and of course had to be there. She was the key to everything. I should mention, said the night before they left, that if this fails, the Empire will hunt humanity to extinction. They cannot allow what you represent to spread. Sat on his, looking up at the stars they would soon be traveling through. What do we represent? Hope, freedom, the idea that even the most broken creature can be healed. The dragon's mental voice was soft. These things are more dangerous to empires than any weapon. Are you afraid? Was quiet for a long moment. I have never been afraid before. Fear was not permitted. Now, he shifted his massive body. Yes, I am afraid, but not of dying. I am afraid of going back to what I was. I am afraid of the chains. Reached up and touched his scales. I won't let that happen, I promise. You cannot promise that. I'm promising anyway. The journey began at dawn, climbed onto's back, followed by, and the soldiers. They strapped themselves into harnesses that had been quickly designed for this purpose. The dragon's scales were warm beneath them, pulsing with inner fire. Everyone ready? Asked through the communication system. 12 voices confirmed. Ready? The dragon spread his wings, impossible wings that somehow existed in both normal space and somewhere else. Hold on. They launched from the surface of Nu like a missile made of living darkness. The atmosphere screamed around them for a moment, then fell silent as they reached space. Below, the colony world shrank to a marble, then a dot, then nothing. Flew. It was not like any travel humans had experienced. Stars stretched into lines around them. Colors that had no names flashed past. Time itself seemed to bend and flow strangely. Felt the dragon's joy through their bond. For 6,000 years he had only flown to kill and destroy. Now he flew toward something else, toward freedom, toward family. The journey that would take a human ship months took only 3 days. They emerged from whatever strange space they had been traveling through into the heart of the Empire. The gas giant threshold filled their view, a massive ball of swirling orange and red. And orbiting it, looking tiny against that enormous backdrop, was the breeding facility. I count 12 patrol ships, reported, studying his scanner, plus defense platforms. This won't be quiet. It does not need to be quiet, replied. It only needs to be fast. The dragon dove toward the station. Alarms began to scream across the facility. Defense platforms opened fire, plasma bolts and missiles streaking toward them. Did not slow down. He rolled through the incoming fire like it was rain. His own plasma breath destroyed 3 platforms in a single sweep. His claws tore through a patrol ship that got too close. He's actually enjoying this, said in amazement, watching the destruction through her helmet display. 6,000 years of anger, replied. He has a lot to let out. They reached the station in under 2 minutes, tore a hole in the outer hull and the team jumped through, their suits protecting them from the vacuum. Emergency doors slammed shut behind them, and suddenly they were inside, surrounded by screaming alarms and flashing red lights. The soldiers spread out, securing the corridor. Checked his map of the station. Information had provided from memory. Holding chamber is this way, he said. Let's move. They fought through defenders, gray-skinned creatures with 4 eyes and too many teeth. The aliens were strong and fast, but they were not prepared for humans who had nothing to lose. The soldiers cut through them like a storm. Finally, they reached the holding chamber. Gasped when she saw it. The room was enormous, stretching hundreds of meters in every direction, and floating in containment fields suspended in artificial sleep were 17 dragons. They were all different. Some were smaller than some larger. Their scales were different colors, red, gold, deep blue, silver. But they all had the same look of terrible power, the same sense of ancient strength waiting to be unleashed. "They're beautiful," whispered. "They are prisoners," replied bitterly, "just as I was." Walked forward toward the nearest dragon. It was a female, her scales the color of midnight sky. Her eyes were closed, her mind locked away in enforced dreaming. "I don't know if I can do this," admitted. "There are so many of them. When I touched your mind, it nearly broke me, touching all of them at once." "Then do not touch them all at once," suggested. "Start with one, then another. I will help you. We will do it together." Took a deep breath. She reached out her hand toward the sleeping dragon. And she reached out her mind toward a darkness that had lasted 6,000 years. The pain was immediate and overwhelming. She felt the chains, ancient and cruel, wrapped around a mind that had forgotten its own name. She felt the rage beneath them, the grief, the despair. But she also felt behind her his presence steady and strong. "I am here," he said. "You are not alone." Pushed harder, she felt something crack, then shatter. The midnight dragon opened her eyes. And for the first time in 3,000 years, she was free. The midnight dragon screamed. It was not a sound that could be heard with ears alone. It was a psychic wave that swept through the station, through the surrounding space, through the minds of every living creature within 1,000 kilometers. It was the scream of someone waking from a 6,000-year nightmare. Fell to her knees, blood dripping from her nose. The effort of breaking even one set of chains had cost her terribly. Her head felt like it was splitting open. But she could feel the dragon's mind now, confused, frightened, angry, but awake, truly awake. "Who are you?" The midnight dragon's mental voice was female, deep and beautiful even in its confusion. "What have you done to me?" "I freed you," managed to say. "The chains are gone, you're free." The dragon was silent for a long moment, then felt something she did not expect: tears. Not physical tears, but the psychic equivalent. 6,000 years of suppressed grief, finally allowed to flow. "Free," the dragon repeated, as if learning the word for the first time. "I am free." Moved closer, his massive form filling the doorway of the holding chamber. "Sister," he said gently, "it is really true. Look at your own mind. Feel the silence where the chains used to be." The midnight dragon, her name was, suddenly knew, feeling it through their new connection, turned her attention inward. A shudder ran through her enormous body. "It is gone," breathed, the voice that was always commanding, the weight that was always pressing. "It is gone." "There are 16 more," said, struggling to her feet. "I have to free them too." "You're in no condition," started. "We don't have time," wiped the blood from her face. "The response fleet will be here soon. Every minute counts." She moved to the next dragon, a great red male whose scales looked like frozen fire. Stayed close, ready to support her. Still adjusting to her new freedom, watched with growing understanding. "Let me help," offered. "I can feel what you did. I can add my strength to yours." Hesitated. Connecting with multiple dragon minds at once was dangerous, but was right. They needed more power. "Together then," she agreed. The three of them, human and two freed dragons, reached out to the red male, felt the chains in his mind, ancient and cruel. She felt steady strength beside her. She felt newer, wilder energy. Together they pushed. The chains shattered. The red dragon, his name was, woke with a roar that shook the entire station. But unlike, he did not scream in confusion. He screamed in fury. Where are they? His mental voice was like volcanic eruption. Where are the masters? I will burn them all. Brother, calm yourself, urged. There will be time for vengeance. But first we must free the others. His rage did not diminish, but he focused it, aimed it. Then let us be quick. I have 6,000 years of fire waiting to be released. They worked faster now, with 4 minds instead of 2. Felt herself stretching thin, her consciousness spreading across multiple connections like a spider web made of light. Each broken chain cost her something. Each freed dragon gave her something back. The 5th dragon was named, her scales the color of Arctic ice. The 6th was black as space itself. The 7th was gold and proud even in his first moments of freedom. One by one they woke. Alarms continued to scream throughout the station. Commander and his soldiers held the corridors, fighting off wave after wave of defenders. They were running out of ammunition. They were running out of time. How many more? Shouted into his communicator. 10, replied, watching with growing concern. The young woman looked like a ghost, pale, trembling, barely standing. But she kept reaching out, kept breaking chains, kept freeing the prisoners. The 10th dragon was the hardest. His name was, and he was almost as old as himself. His chains were thicker, stronger, wrapped around his mind in layers upon layers. The had feared him most, and had bound him most tightly. Poured everything she had into breaking those chains. She felt herself fragmenting, pieces of her consciousness drifting away like leaves in a storm. Hold on, urged, I have you. We all have you, added. You are not alone, little human. You will never be alone again. The chains broke. Opened eyes that burned like twin suns. His mind touched, and she felt his gratitude, vast and deep and ancient. You have given me something I never thought to have again, he said. I will not forget this. 7 more dragons remained, could barely see now. Her vision was blurred, her thoughts scattered, but she kept going. She had promised. The 11th, the 12th, the 13th. Blood was flowing freely from her nose and ears. Begged her to stop, but she refused. The 14th, the 15th, the 16th. One more, whispered, just one more. The last dragon was the smallest of them all, barely 200 meters long. Her scales were silver and her name was Lyra. She was the youngest, created only 1,000 years ago. Her chains were newer but no less cruel. Reached out one final time, she had nothing left. She was empty, hollow, a shell with barely enough mind to think. But she was not alone. 17 dragon minds joined with hers. 17 ancient consciousnesses lent her their strength. Together, truly together, for the first time in their long existence, they reached out to their youngest sister. The chains broke. Lyra woke and collapsed. She fell toward the hard metal floor of the station, unconscious before she hit, but she never touched the ground. Caught her gently, cradling her tiny body like the most precious treasure in the universe. She is alive, he reported to the others, exhausted beyond imagination but alive. She saved us, said. This tiny creature saved us all. Then we will save her in return, replied, and we will burn anyone who threatens her. Outside the station, the response fleet had arrived, 20 warships and 2 dragon carriers. Admiral himself led them, determined to recapture the before this disaster spread further. Destroy the station, he ordered. Destroy everything, leave nothing but ash. The fleet opened fire. Inside, Commander braced for the end. They had no way to escape. The station would be rubble in seconds. But the bombardment never reached them. 17 dragons burst from the station like fire escaping a furnace. They spread their wings, their bodies forming a wall of living armor between the fleet and the station. And then they attacked. 6,000 years of rage, 6,000 years of slavery, 6,000 years of forced obedience and stolen freedom, All of it was unleashed in a single terrible moment. Plasma breath destroyed 3 ships with one blast. Claws tore a carrier in half, swallowed a cruiser whole, his internal fires reducing it to nothing. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it ended, the fleet was gone, not defeated, erased. There was nothing left but cooling debris and the fatting screams of the dying. Admiral's last transmission reached "They are free, the dragons are free, may the gods help us all." On the station, woke slowly. She was still cradled in claw. Around her, 16 other dragons had gathered, their massive forms filling the space outside the shattered station. "Did we do it?" she asked weakly. "We did it," confirmed. "They are all free, and they want to meet you." One by one, the dragons lowered their heads toward her. Some touched her gently with their snouts. Others simply looked at her with ancient eyes filled with new emotions: gratitude, hope, wonder. "Thank you," said. "Thank you," echoed. "Thank you," 17 voices said as one. "Thank you for seeing us. Thank you for freeing us. Thank you for giving us back ourselves." Smiled through her exhaustion. "What will you do now?" she asked. "You're free, you can go anywhere." The dragons exchanged glances, real glances between free minds for the first time in. "Where you go," answered for all of them, "we go. You gave us freedom. Now we give you our loyalty, not because we are forced to, because we choose to." "Because you are family now," Lyra added, her young voice bright with joy. "And dragons never abandon family." Looked at the circle of ancient beings surrounding her, creatures that had burned worlds, that had ended civilizations, that the galaxy feared more than death itself. And they had chosen her. "Then let's go home," she said. "We have an empire to bring down." 17 dragons roared their agreement. The sound echoed across the system, across the galaxy, across history itself. The liberation had begun. The empire fell in 3 years. It did not fall because of the dragons alone, though this certainly helped. It fell because of what the dragons represented, the idea that even the most powerful chains could be broken, that even the oldest slaves could be freed, that kindness could destroy what cruelty had built. Word spread across the 17 star systems like wildfire. "They are free. The dragons have turned against their masters. A human woman broke their chains with nothing but her gift and her compassion." Slave species that had served the empire for centuries began to rise up. Worlds that had been conquered ago suddenly remembered what freedom meant. The military, which had relied so heavily on dragon power, found itself fighting on 100 fronts at once. And everywhere they turned, the dragons were there. Led the liberation campaign, though she would never have called herself a leader. She simply went where she was needed, breaking chains and freeing minds. The 17 dragons from the first raid stayed with her always. More joined as they were freed, 312 in total, scattered across the galaxy. Not all of them survived the war. Some died fighting warships. Others fell defending the slaves they had once been forced to oppress. Each death was mourned by all, felt through the bonds they now shared. But most survived, and most chose to stay with humanity. "Why?" a diplomat asked years later when the treaty was being signed. "Why do they follow you? You are small and weak. You cannot fly or breathe fire. What do you have that we did not?" The diplomat was speaking to Commander, who had become a general during the war and now represented humanity in the peace negotiations. Thought about the question for a long moment. "We saw them as people," he finally said. "Not weapons, not tools, people. That's something you never did." The diplomat did not understand. Perhaps the never would. On Earth, everything had changed. The dragons needed space, vast areas where they could stretch their wings and rest their enormous bodies. Humanity gave them entire continents. The dragons, in return, gave humanity protection, friendship, and something harder to define, a sense of wonder that the species had almost forgotten. Children grew up seeing dragons in the sky. Students learned about the in school, studying their history and culture. Scientists worked with dragon volunteers to understand their physiology and psychology. Artists painted them, writers told their stories, musicians composed symphonies inspired by their haunting songs. And the bonds continued. This gift, it turned out, was not unique. It was rare, extremely rare, but it existed in other humans as well. Perhaps 1 in a million had the potential. With training and support, some of them could form the same kind of connection she had formed with. They called them Dragon Masters, though hated the name. "We don't master them," she told a journalist once. "We partner with them. There's a difference. A master gives orders, a partner asks questions." The academy was built on the same field where had first landed. Became its director, developing training programs and psychological support systems. Young humans with the gift came from all over human space to learn how to use it responsibly. And dragons came too, seeking partners of their own. Not all of them wanted human bonds. Some preferred their freedom, living alone on uninhabited worlds or flying endlessly through the stars. That was their choice, and humanity respected it. But many did want connection, real connection, freely given and freely received. "We were created for war," explained to a class of students one day. She had become a teacher at the academy, sharing dragon history and perspective. "Fighting is in our blood, but we were also created with minds that could think and hearts that could feel. They saw the first and ignored the second. Humans saw both." The coalition that formed after the war was not an empire. Humanity had learned from the mistakes. Instead, it was a loose alliance of free peoples, bound by shared values rather than force. Dragons, humans, and the liberated species of the former territories worked together as equals. It was not perfect. Nothing ever is. There were disagreements, conflicts, moments when old wounds reopened and old angers flared. But they worked through them because that was what free people did. Stepped back from public life after the war ended. She returned to a small house on the edge of the academy grounds. Stayed with her, his massive form curled around the property like a living mountain. She was 35 now, older than she felt. The years of war and the strain of breaking so many chains had aged her. Some days she felt the weight of every dragon she had freed, every mind she had touched, every bond she had formed. But she never regretted it. One evening, many years after the war, a young student came to visit her. The girl was maybe 18, with bright eyes and a gift that reminded of herself at that age. "Can I ask you something?" the girl said. "Of course." "When you first touched mine, when you broke his chains, were you scared?" Thought about it. She remembered that day so clearly. The dragon descending like a falling star, the bombardment that nearly killed them both, the moment when ancient chains shattered and a 6,000-year-old mind reached out to hers. "Yes," she admitted. "I was terrified, but I was more scared of doing nothing. I could feel his pain, you see. I could feel how much he was suffering, and I couldn't just ignore that." The girl nodded slowly. "How did you know it would work? How did you know he wouldn't just kill you?" "I didn't," smiled. "That's the thing about reaching out to someone. You can never be sure how they'll respond. You just have to trust that the connection you're offering is worth the risk." And it was, added, his mental voice joining the conversation. He lifted his great head, one massive eye focusing on the girl. "The risk she took saved my entire species. It changed the galaxy. All because one small human decided to see a monster as a person." The girl looked at the dragon, then back at, "Do you think I could do something like that someday?" "I think," said carefully, "that anyone with your gift has the chance to do something meaningful. Maybe not the same as what I did. Maybe something completely different. The universe is big, and there are so many beings out there who need someone to see them, really see them for the first time." That night after the girl had gone, sat outside with. The stars shone bright above them, and somewhere among those stars, dragons flew free for the first time in. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked him. "Choosing to stay with me, you could have gone anywhere, done anything." "I could have," agreed, "but where would I have gone? What would I have done? For 6,000 years I had no choices. Now I have unlimited choices, and I choose to be here, with you, with our family." He meant the other dragons knew, and the humans who had bonded with them, and the academy students, and all the strange, wonderful beings they had met across the galaxy. "Family," she repeated softly. "I like that." "So do I." A shooting star crossed the sky, though it might have been a dragon flying too high to see clearly. Watched it pass and felt, for a moment, the vast network of bonds she had created. Hundreds of connections, stretching across light years, linking minds that had once been alone. They had tried to terrify humanity with a dragon. Instead, they had given humanity something far more valuable, a chance to prove what they really were. Not conquerors, not masters, but friends, partners, family. That was the human gift in the end. Not psychic powers or advanced technology, just the simple, revolutionary ability to see other beings as worthy of love. Above them, the stars continued to shine. And somewhere out there, the other great powers of the galaxy watched humanity with new eyes, wondering what they would befriend next. The dragon shifted slightly, creating more room for to lean against his warm scales. She settled in, comfortable in a way she had never been before meeting him. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For choosing me." The dragon's laughter rumbled through her mind like distant thunder, warm and full of joy. "Little human," he said, "thank you for choosing us." And there, under the stars, a woman and a dragon watched the future unfold. A future built not on fear or force, but on the simple, powerful foundation of connection. It was thought a very good start.